Hello, I'm Graham Horton and welcome to this video. Now this video will be a deep dive into the X5 Trigger from Godox, which is, if you like, the personality module that goes with the IT32 flash. So the X5 Trigger allows you to purchase a flash system, and if you change your camera, all you have to do is change the personality module to match that camera and you've got yourself a new flash system. So today we're going to have a look at X5C, which is the Canon personality module, the X5S, which is for the Sony camera, and the X5F, which is for Fuji cameras. So these will combine with the IT32 to provide you a flash system dedicated for that particular device. We're going to start with the Canon camera, and this is the Canon EOS M6 Mark II, but it will work with all the Canon cameras that have got the hot shoe, as you can see here. So the personality module just clips to the base of the flash like so, and it now becomes an on-camera flash, which you can use to provide just straightforward on-camera flash, or you can use this to provide a master flash to control other groups. Now I'll break this down into three sections, so we'll look at the Canon, then the Sony, and then the Fuji, and I'll put timestamps in the video description below so you can hop to those if you only want to look at one personality module. In this video I want to try and cover some of the areas that have not been covered in some of the reviews that I've seen on YouTube regarding the X5 Trigger, clarify how you can use it, and correct some of the literature that's been published about the X5 Trigger that is incorrect. So it's a deep dive into what you can achieve with the X5 and what it's not possible to achieve with the X5. So let's start and show you the X5C version, which is for the Canon system. And so this is the IT32 with the Canon personality module fitted to the bottom of it, mounted on the Canon EOS 6 Mark II. On-camera flash is the default, and you can see that it becomes TTL mode. And you've got the facility on the back of the camera here to change the exposure compensation from +3 to -3 EV. In the TTL mode, obviously the camera determines the exposure and passes that exposure to the flash unit. Let me just take a picture with this camera and we can have a look at the result. It's the manual focus. There she is. So this is in the TTL mode, and there's a TTL exposure, obviously the dark shadow behind because we're on camera flash. So TTL works remarkably well with this system, and I got no concerns whatsoever with the TTL performance. So as we saw in my review of the product, you've got the option here to change to the other modes. So at the moment we're in TTL, we've got manual mode, and we've got the multi-mode strobe, so you can change the frequency and the number of pulses. Got the opportunity here to go between first sync and second sync and high speed, and that will depend on the camera body, but that's supported here on the Canon interface. The Canon interface is the one that gives you most control over the X Trigger. With the Sony and with the Fuji, you've got limited control, but if you're fortunate enough to have a Canon system, you're going to get full benefit of the X5 Trigger as a standalone trigger rather than implementing a master or slave module from the IT32. I want to show you that in a little bit more detail now. So we're going to go into the interface of the camera. So we're going to go into the flash system. So here we are in the multi-mode, but you can also switch between the other modes. So if I just press enter on there, I can go between multi-mode, manual flash and TTL. So you have control of the X5 directly from the back of the camera. Let me just set ETTL or TTL mode, and you now see that we've got control of the synchronization. So we've got high speed, second curtain sync and first curtain sync, and they're reflected into the X5 Trigger. So we'll just leave that in first curtain sync. Got flash exposure compensation, which is across the board, so you've got the control here between -2 and +2. So again, these will be reflected into the X5 trigger. If I go into this mode here, which is wireless mode, if I turn that on by selecting radio transmission, you can now see that it switches over to the group mode, and that gives you the facility now of being able to set individually channel A, B, C and D in the Canon system. So it gives you independent control of channel A, channel B, channel C and channel D. So if I wanted to change group A to a manual mode, then I can select manual mode from there, and I can change the flash output power. So if I wanted to go to a quarter power or half power, I can set that, and that is actually reflected, as you can see, on the back of the display. I try and brighten that up for you. So we've got the half there. If I go into the Canon interface again and I change that to full power, set OK, back to the main menu, you see that it's now shown in group A, and again on the back of the camera you can see that group A has changed to 1/1 or full power. Just go back into the camera interface again, and if we went into group B again, we can change that to manual mode if we wanted to, and again change the power level. Let's change that to 1/4, and again if we look on the back of the interface, you can see here we've now got group A at full power, group B at quarter, and you've got group C and you've got group D to control. That is with the on-camera flash, but what I can do is actually remove the IT32 and it will still control those channels. So that is with the IT32 attached to the X5 trigger. But what I can do is remove the X5 trigger and the X5 will still be controlled from the Canon menu. So I've got some other flashes here which are IT30s, Canon, Sony and Olympus versions, or I've got the TT350 Fuji version, and I've also got here one of the big AD200 TTL units. So with the camera interface, it gives me the control of those separate units directly from the camera interface, not reliant on the flash unit being the master controller. Just give me a minute, I'll set that up and I'll show you how that works. Now the factory reset condition for these flashes is to supply the flashes with the channel set to channel 21 and ID 0, but some of the flashes like the TT350 do not support channel 21. So what I'm going to do is select a channel which is within the range of the other flashes. So again, we just need to go into the menu here, and I'm going to change the flash channel with the radio dial here. So I press that and you can see we're channel 21. So I'm going to set this down to, say, channel 10. So here I'm going to set channel 10. Go back to the main menu. So now the interface is on channel 10. So I can set these flashes onto channel 10 and this will be reflected across. Okay, what I've done is set the AD200 as channel 10 and group A. The second one is the Sony version of the IT30. So what I'm going to do is select channel 10 on here. So again, just swipe through, go to the radio dial and we select channel 10. Go back to the menu, and the other one is the Canon interface, which is currently group C, and again I'm going to set that to channel 10. and go back to the main menu. Now at the moment you can see that all of these groups have defaulted to TTL, TTL on the Sony interface, and TTL on the 8200. You can see on the camera interface, if I just switch over to the camera interface, you can see that I've actually set A, B, C and D to be manual. And if we look at the powers, you can see I've got group A set to 128th, group B to an 8th, group C to a 16th, and group D to a half. What I need to do is synchronize the X5 trigger to the rest of the unit. So what I'm going to do is take off the IT32 trigger. So I've removed the IT32 so it isn't part of the equation. In fact, what I'll do is I'll turn that off so there's no confusion. So that is now turned off. So we're reliant on the Canon interface through the X5 trigger to the subunits. Now that I've taken that unit off, if we look at the devices, you can see that group A is now set to 128th. You can see that on the display. Group B is set to 1/8, and group C is set to the 16th, which we set through the interface. If I wanted to use TTL, then the shortcut is to use the onboard button on the device of the X5 trigger. I can press and hold the M button, and the little LED on the top here should change over to green. So I'm just going to press that. Display is actually pulsing green, and if I synchronize that by doing a flash, you can see that already group A has gone to TTL because that is the default control from the trigger. So the trigger always supplies group A. To enable TTL on group B and C, again I need just to go into the camera interface. So let me go into the camera interface, and I'm going to set group B to TTL. So it's going to group B, select TTL and no flash exposure compensation, and I'm going to set group C again to TTL. Back to the main menu, and now you can see here group B is now TTL, and group C is TTL. So we've managed to control the 3 units from the X5 trigger, controlled from the camera menu. The X5 trigger only controls channel A, so if I try to change the flash exposure compensation with the buttons on the back of the X5 trigger, it will only change the exposure compensation for group A, and that is the default. To change the exposure compensation on B, C or D, then you can use the camera interface to do that. So that is the beauty of the Canon interface system. It allows you to control those groups. By comparison, the Fuji and the Sony interface, I don't know about the Nikon. I haven't got a Nikon camera or a system to check it with, but I suggest that it's going to be the same. I think it's only the Canon that has this full interface to allow you to set the individual parameters for B and C and D with a Canon system. So that's how you would actually set up the system. With the A set to TTL, I'm going to take a picture again of the doll, and the B and C will also be firing in TTL. So let me point the flash at the doll. Let's take the shot using TTL from group A. And you can see we've got a great exposure. We've obviously got group B and group C in play here, so you could actually have group C as a sort of cross shadow light, or you could have group B as a hair fill light, and you control the flash exposure compensation again from that menu to enable you to get the lighting that you want. So the Canon system gives you that full flexibility of being able to set multiple lights up and control the flash intensity from the back of the camera. I want to switch over to the Sony system now and just show you the differences, and then we'll switch over to the Fuji system and again show you the differences in those interfaces. So I've now switched over to the Sony VE10, and it could be any of the Sony cameras that have the multi-interface shoe on the top of the camera. So this is the X5S trigger fitted to the camera. Because the channel will be 21 by default, I'm going to reinstall the IT32 flash on here and just set the channel to be channel 10 as we did before. So if I go into the radio signal, and actually the flash has remembered the fact that we were on channel 10, so that would have been transferred through to the X5 trigger, so don't need to do anything else there. So if we just look at that from the Sony menu, in the flash profile, which is page 7 of 11 on this particular camera, the flash mode is full flash. I want to go through to the external flash set. You can see we've got control of the external flash set, and we've got the mode as TTL. We can switch to manual, we can switch to multi-flash, back to TTL, and we've got exposure compensation, which we can change, and that will be reflected onto the camera. So you can see there we've got +1, which we set from the camera interface. So you got that control whilst the IT32 is attached to the camera. But if I remove the IT32 from the X5S trigger, again, if we now try to go into the menu, you now see the external flash set is now grayed out, so we've got no control of what's happening with the X5 trigger. So let me just go back to the menu. So external flash set is grayed out, so we've got no control. All we've got now is the option there for the flash mode, which is fill flash. We can do the slow sync or rear sync. So let's go with the standard trigger. Flash compensation, which would be say +1, but that will only be reflected into group A. So here we have group A on the 8200, but you notice we don't get a display of the exposure compensation. We're in TTL mode, so let's change it to manual mode. So let's go into the menu, flash mode, and we'll take a shot using the 8200 again. So this will be in the TTL mode. So that is with TTL. To prove that works, I'm going to go into the menu and we're going to change the flash exposure compensation to -2. So we'll set that to -2. We'll go back to the menu, from the menu to the main shooting screen, back to group A, which is controlled by the trigger. And you can see that is a reduced power from the original flash setting. So you can control flash exposure compensation from the Sony menu. So you can use flash exposure compensation from the Sony menu, or you can use it directly on the back of the X5 trigger, but of course you don't see the exposure compensation when you're just using the X5 trigger alone. It doesn't show on any of the external flashes. It's only when you use the camera interface you'll know exactly how much you are changing. But again, you haven't got control of the other groups. You can't set group B, C. You've got no control over those from the interface on the Sony camera system. So that is the limitation with the Sony system. Let me switch over now finally to the Fuji system, and I'll show you the same setup, and you'll find you've got probably the same setup as you have with Sony, only control of the A group. So at the moment I've got the Fuji X-T4 and the Godox TT350 Fuji version, and you can see it works perfect on the camera. So let's just look at the interface. And if we go into the menu, flash setting, see I can select from TTL, manual, multi, off, back to TTL, and if I'm in TTL mode I can control the flash exposure compensation from the back of the camera, and you can actually see this on the TT350. So if I change exposure compensation, you can see that the values change on the back of the screen. If I go into manual mode, and again you can see the flash unit has changed to manual mode, and I can vary the intensity of the flash. So that is with the TT350F, which is the Fuji version of the flash unit. I'm going to reinstall the X5F, which should mimic those values. So here we've got the TT350 all mounted on the camera. Let's go back into the interface. We'll go back to the TTO setting, and now when I try to change from TTL to manual, you'll see what happens. I'm going to go over to manual and it switches back to TTL. It will not stay in the manual mode. You can go to multi-mode and it works quite happily, but it doesn't work in the manual mode. The light on the top of the X-T5 is showing green, which says it's in TTL mode, but if I press and hold the button to change it into manual mode, it still doesn't affect the interface. I still cannot change to manual, so there is some situation there where the manual mode cannot be selected. So with TTL, and again it's in group A because that's what's triggered by the X-T5. I'm going to switch back to TTL mode. Got the AD200, which is on the same channel, which is channel 11 at the moment, or 10, and we will take a picture of the doll using TTL from the AD200, and you can see the exposure is pretty much spot on. So the camera is doing the right thing, but unfortunately it doesn't appear as though you can switch to manual mode from the back of the camera with the device. If I switch to manual mode with the control, it switches to manual on the back here, and I should be able to control the flash intensity using the minus key and the plus key. So nothing changes on the flash, even though we're in the correct channel and the correct group. with the IT32 flash and the X5F connected, you do have the interface working. So if I'm in multi mode, I can switch to manual, TTL and off, so that works fine, and I can get the flash exposure compensation, and that transfers through to the flash unit. So with the IT32 on the X5F, everything works fine. It's only when you take the flash unit off that we lose that ability to control the flash from the camera to set up manual mode. So there we are, that is the X5 Trigger in a little bit more detail. Hope you found that useful. If you're a new viewer and you haven't seen any more of my reviews, please do check them out. I'll put links to the playlist for reviews in the video description below. So until the next video, thanks very much for watching. Please do take care, and I hope to see you all very, very soon. Goodbye for now.